Good morning and namaste, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful Sunday's Living Truth 365 Journey and Truth service, where we're doing what we do once a month, truth and trending topics with the Rev. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. To my right,
Rev Chantel.
To my left,
Reverend Terry Thompson.
And I am Reverend Drea, and we are so glad to have you today because this Truth and Trending Topics, I think, is going to be a little different. We have several different topics that we're going to talk about, but I think there is a running theme right throughout all of them. So we're going to kind of discuss each one individually, but then we're going to probably bring them together and talk about the through line. And of course, if you have any thoughts on it, please go ahead and join us in the discussion. Go ahead and leave something in the chat. We have somebody watching it and taking a look at it, and we'll go ahead and discuss whatever it is you bring up as well. So we're going to go ahead and get started. But the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that, unfortunately, our state has been touched by a school shooting. The Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia, unfortunately, there were 2 students and 2 teachers who lost their lives in that unfortunate event. And so we just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that and have a moment of silence to acknowledge this school shooting.
And send love, light, and healing energy.
Thank you all so much for acknowledging that moment for us. And as Reverend Terry said, we are sending healing, light, love, and strength to the family, the community, and all who were touched by that unfortunate event. So let's go ahead now, and we're going to move through our different topics that we're going to be talking about. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and let Reverend Terry go ahead and cue it up for us. He was the one that kind of brought this to our attention. So I'll let you go ahead and set it up, and then we'll have our discussion.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Drea. So we kind of have this theme. First of all, our theme for the month, our key for the month is to pay attention.
Right.
And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to pay attention to our thoughts and whether our thoughts are lining up with truth. You know, we have many different beliefs and belief systems across the world. We each have our own individual beliefs, even though we may kind of follow the same general religious or spiritual traditions. But they will influence how we view the world and what it is that we say and do and how we behave. So using that kind of as a lead-in, don't know whether you're aware or not, but there are several states across the country, Florida and Oklahoma in particular, who have passed bills in the state level to have school chaplains in the public school system. A lot of people feel like this is a good idea. Other people feel like it's not. Some people feel that it's a good idea, that people need to learn about the Bible and we need to start with our young kids. There are other people that feel it's discriminatory because if you're not of a particular religious faith, then you may feel out of place having a chaplain there that may try to push something on you, or the perception is they may try to push a belief on you. So, in response to this law being passed, the Satanic Temple says that they are going to have people that they're going to send to be chaplains. So, folks, what do you think? Should we have people from the Satanic Temple being chaplains? And if we're not going to allow them chaplains, is that discriminatory?
Equal opportunity.
So our audience says equal opportunity.
Go ahead. I think I would have to agree with what our audience member said. If that is something that they're putting into law, then that would be discriminatory in the law. I don't think it's a good law, personally, because for me, I think there is, we have this illusion in this country of separation of church and state, right? And so we want to go ahead and keep that. So I don't think that that's necessarily a law that we should have in place. But if we are going to have it in place, then it should apply equally to everybody.
Yeah, so let me give one clarifying thing that I did in a little bit of research about this. Mm-hmm. The Satanic Temple says that they don't actually worship Satan. they use Satan as I guess, as an icon for rebellion against things that are established, especially established religion. So they don't believe in all the things that you would, I guess, come to mind, thinking about people who are Satan worshipers. But it brings up the point, why is what you believe more correct than what I believe?
Well, I don't think that's, I agree with that standpoint. I agree with the audience that freedom, we should have freedom. Like, and not even in that religion. Like, if you're going to bring chaplains to the schools, then you need to open it up to every type of worship practice, whether it is Buddhism, Islam, Satanic, whatever. You have to be open to every type of religion. And we know, particularly in Florida, he wasn't looking for that. He was looking more so for Christianity. You know what I mean? He wanted to box kids into
and here's the thing.
that.
They don't have any requirements for what qualifies somebody to be a chaplain. So I could say that Jesus appointed me and go down and, I've got a church that I'm affiliated with and go down and register as a chaplain, and I could be empowered to be a chaplain in a particular school district.
I'm kind of conflicted on this because having kids in school, there is some type of support they need outside of counseling, outside of their school counselors. Does it need to be religious? I don't think so, but they need some type of other support in the school system that gives them, when they're having those conflicting ideas, or some of them need that religious support. Some of them grow up in homes where religion is very important and they want to go and speak to someone about that. Yes, please, audience. Because you have a child almost in school system too.
Yeah. It's on.
Yeah. It's live.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, I do have a child. Thank you for reminding me. I be forgetting. I just play. No, so I think that there's relevance to what we're discussing, but I think that I want to bring up the other side of it, which is the accountability side. And I think that, yes, schools can have more support. Schools can have more, what's the word? They can be more holistic in terms of, creating whole and complete human beings, producing, good citizens, good, well-rounded people. We can do a better job in our education system, but I think that we are losing a little bit of the sight of the accountability of parents. Mm-hmm. And I think I do believe that if we had more accountability with parents and more accountability with the role that parents play in, and it sounds redundant because it's like, who else is going to raise the kids? You know what I'm saying? Like, but the role that a parent plays in raising their kid, because it's so subjective. How does it go? You raise your kids the way you want to raise them. I'll raise mine the way I want to raise them. We got everybody doing it there. I'm doing it right. You doing it wrong, or I'm criticizing you, and we lost sight of just the fact of this child is going to be adult one day, and this child needs to be whole. This child needs to be, as well-rounded as possible in terms of their, social, financial, all of that. And so I think that opening up the argument of, should we have chaplains? Should we not? What role should we play? I think that it's a conversation that needs to be had, but I don't think that conversation needs to be had before we talk about accountability with parents.
I agree.
So
to also disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an accountable parent, but my daughter has friends who don't have accountable parents.
Yeah.
And they come to me as the accountable parent, as somebody they can reach out to, as somebody they can reflect to. So if they didn't have me, who would they have? You know what I mean? Or if they didn't have that other support. So what I'm saying is, and then I've thought about this being a reverend or a minister myself, and I've talked to my daughter about it. How do I go in the school system and help your friends? Mm-hmm. Because some of our friends are going through the issues of not knowing who they like. Not knowing, okay, I like a girl or I like a guy. Yeah, the sexuality, like they're confused about it. And some of the parents are like, nah, you are the pronoun things. The kids are very big on pronouns right now. You know what I mean? And They're very big on what you call them. And if they are identifying a different way than their parents believe, then they are literally saying their names are different in school than what their parents believe. They won't go home and talk to their parents about it. They won't go home and have these conversations. But their friends know that they identify as a he, him. But parents, no, that's not accepted in my household. So who do those kids go and reach out to?
No,
because their parents are there, their parents are supportive, but they are not supportive in that. You know what I mean? They're not talking to them, they're not having that. But these kids are still doing it. So I feel like there needs to be some support in the school. And maybe it's not a chaplain, you know what I mean? But there needs to be something in the school systems for these children right now, outside of counseling, that they can go to for support because they're looking for it. They're looking for it, but it's not there. So then they're going to each other, or they're going to social media, or they're going to whatever. And I'm seeing it and I'm like, oh, this is a little scary.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and there's so you know, you've been a parent longer than me, and so you know I'm 6 years in the game, 6 years in the game. So you know
it's all a journey. Like, I don't know this thing.
It's fluid. It's fluid right now. And so but the thing that I have noticed in my 6 years of parenting is that there's a central focus to. Well, two things. There's a central focus to reactivity, and then there's not a heavy emphasis on the genesis. And when I say the genesis, I mean like having a child, leaving the hospital, 6 months, a year, you know, outside of it, you know, quote unquote checkups. There's no society like you leave the hospital, you've been there 2 days, you know, whatever. Nobody calls you like, hey, yeah, it's 6 months. Just want to see how the baby's doing. You know, I mean, outside of you going to the doctor and they saying, oh, how's everything been going? Nobody cares what you done did with this baby over the last 6 months. Like, I'm so serious, you know, and at the end of the day, there's this gray area, this fine line of accountability versus holding people, personal accountability versus, you know, public accountability. And I think that we have to work on that public accountability part. You know, I think I heard somebody say the other day, there's no shame in our community no more. There's like, you know, it used to be like you doing that? Oh man, what? Y'all need to, you know, it used to be kind of like I can't believe they doing that. Like, somebody need to talk to them. Like, there's none of that no more. It's like, they over there, what they say, they eating the kids, they eating the dogs, they eating the cats. You know, it's like, I'm joking about that, but seriously, like, it's no, you know, oh, okay, those people over there, you know, doing X, Y, Z, and it's like, oh, I guess that's their thing, you know, and I guess what they say, as long as it's not illegal, whatever, you know. So I think that we have to like hold each other accountable to a certain extent, to a certain higher level, in terms of parenting and in terms of, but I do agree there needs to be more resources, but. Part of what you were saying in terms of the kids coming to you from other households. So that's the point. The specific emphasis needs to be placed on households, placed on, you know, and we can give resources also. So some of these same things we're talking about doing for schools, we can make available for just a parent if he or she wants to, you know, utilize that outside of the school system. So we live in a kind of a reactive society. It's like, you know, we don't care about your kids until your kids is a problem for somebody else. And it's kind of just, you know, it's not fun to say, but, you know. So.
Gotcha. Let's bring it back to the story that we were talking about, and specifically, this idea of having chaplains in schools, and what that means. I understand that you're talking about accountability needs to come from the parents, but regardless of that, what this conversation about having chaplains in school, and then, but not all chaplains. Right? Not all chaplains. Right? Some chaplains, or what have you. So where does that come in? How do we talk about that? Because I understand that what I think what our audience member was talking about is a little bit different than what this article is alluding to.
So I work, for those of you that know me, I've worked in private schools for about 40 years now. And I've worked for a couple of schools that were quote unquote religious schools or connected to a particular religion. but the way that they handled it, and particularly because this was in the North in New York, it was done in a way that I think that, at least for me personally, I did not find it offensive. They had a chaplain at one of the schools that was tied to an Episcopal church. That chaplain was an Episcopal priest, but he also was very well versed in Islam, in Hinduism, and other world religions. And when he taught the classes and worked with the kids, they not only got whatever religious instruction they were supposed to get that was Christianity, but he also talked with them about other religions. And actually, he was considered a scholar on Islam and had a very different view than, I would say, more fundamentalist Christians have about Islam. So I think that if we're going to have this type of religious instruction, there needs to, number one, be standards about what the chaplain is going to do and teach. And it needs to be something that's going to be more inclusive, that will give people a real understanding of what other religions are like, and not this fear-mongering that we've had, that if you hear someone is a Satanist, or if you hear someone's a Wiccan, for example, that you assume that they're witches and they're practicing the occult, when that's the farthest thing from the truth. They just are people that worship nature, and there's a spiritual quality behind what they do that anybody can really relate to, you know, when you really break it down. That's one of the ways I think that if we're going to have this, that's the way that I think that it would need to be done.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about that, Reverend Chantel?
I like that. I've lost my train of thought because I was going to look up what a chaplain actually does in a school. Like, what is the or not even in a school, like, definition of a chaplain? Is a chaplain there to teach, or is a chaplain there just to support? Because if you're there to teach, that's one thing. Then yes, we need a standard. But if you're there to support, which is what I'm in my mind, like a chaplain is there. Yeah, but almost kind of like a counselor, I guess, in my thought pattern. That's why I wanted to look up the definition, but I didn't.
But the question is how you go about doing that, because there are those that believe that, especially if it's very entrenched in their religion, when you come with a problem, the answer is Jesus for everything. And that may not be where you're coming from or what you believe, or they may tell you that, no, the he and she is not what you were born with. That's not how God made you.
You're saying the chaplain would come with that perspective?
The chaplain may come with that perspective depending on what their training is and what they believe their role is.
Yeah, I would agree with you in having someone who is well versed in all religions to be open and receptive to anything that comes to them, and not. Because to me, I'm seeing the chaplain as just a kid coming in. I'm thinking of the school system. Kid coming in. Why would you go to a chaplain? Well, you're dealing with something emotionally, maybe, or you're dealing a conflict, religiously, or something you're dealing with outside of what you feel a school counselor could come in. So maybe that person, and where I see that person, is just being open and receptive, like you're saying, to all religions, and not steering you down the road. But if you say Jesus is what I need, and you hear the kid saying Jesus, then you support that student in whatever their beliefs are, but not necessarily directing them into your own beliefs, if I'm making sense with that. Yeah. Because I did kind of see that in the article we were reading, why the Satan group wanted to come is because they felt like this group, the children are impressionable at this age. And if you're bringing in a religious thought to them, then you're putting that religious thought on them. So they kind of felt like, okay, well, if Christians can do it, then why can't we bring our rebellious thought to them? You know what I mean? And why can't it be open? So I like your thought, but I think it should be in a guided way, open and guided.
Well, a chaplain is...
Okay, thank you.
A chaplain is a clergy member or a religious representative who provides spiritual support, counseling, and guidance in various settings. They can come from various different religious traditions and serve people regardless of their faith or belief system. They offer emotional and spiritual care to individuals facing life challenges, crisis situations, and simply seeking comfort and guidance.
Thank you. Okay, so that's what I thought was thinking in my head, support. They're not there to teach, they're there to support.
And I get that because the school that you were in was a religious school. Mm-hmm. I think, for me, the best way that I see to handle it is that we have a number of chaplains on the speed dial. If the parent and the student want the child to get that kind of support. But I think what should be in the school is a therapist or psychologist, and it's not necessarily coming from a spiritual aspect, because there are some that don't believe in any of that, right? And they should not have to wade through that. They should not have to hope that a chaplain won't bring that to their child, right? They should not have to hope that, the chaplain will influence their child any kind of way, because the person does have that religious background, does have that spirituality, and perhaps does not know how to separate that from that. As opposed to a clinical psychologist or therapist or whatever who could be available for students to get that kind of support. That's my thought.
I want to say that they do have psychologists in the school. At least I know in some of them.
I don't think that that's a regular.
No? Because I think there's I know a nonprofit organization, Chris 180, I used to work for, specifically sent their psychiatrists to the school. So I'm just wondering what program I don't know what schools or what program
Well, the public school system may be completely different.
So for public schools, you might have a psychologist who serves a cluster of schools. It may not be specific to one, depending on the demographic of that school district or area.
Okay. Makes sense then.
That also sounds like they may not be readily available or accessible, like at a moment's notice if a student needed them.
That is correct, at least at the elementary level. I don't know about middle.
About that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well.
So, so we thought we've talked about that. Let's move to another topic. Because then I think once we talk about them, we could see the through line through all of them once we do that. I think the next topic, Reverend Terry, you're going to tee up for us again.
So, in a way, it kind of explains why there are some places or some states that are trying to get the Bible or religion into the classroom. And this idea that Christianity, in particular in the United States, is under attack. And it's so much under attack that we as Christians need to be vigilant about it, because that next disaster is right around the corner. There's one person that's going to come along and wipe out all of our righteous Christians, because you can see it in everything that they do with the way that this country is going. So there was this article written by a conservative columnist. His name is David French. He writes for the New York Times, amongst other newspapers. And he is a conservative Christian, although he does have some views that some would consider as being progressive. He wrote this article that kind of espoused the views that I just said, that many people who are Christians believe that they're being persecuted. And he asked the questions, are Christians being persecuted in this country? And the short answer was no, at least not in the way that persecution, feeding the Christians to the lions and outlawing Christianity. It's more been a thing that we don't have the kind of programs and things in government supporting us the way that we want them to be to advance the causes of Christianity. And so what he also pointed out is that many of them have very little tolerance and will turn on anybody that doesn't believe what they believe, particularly what we're seeing what's happening in the presidential elections with Christians for Trump, that there are Christians that literally will tell you, if you're against Trump, you're going to hell. And so it's this thing that Christians are persecuting non-Christians with their beliefs, and everybody's looking to try to win to have their way be the right way. So it's this thing of hypocrisy that I'm going to do to you the thing that you tell me that you don't want you to do to me.
But they were also persecuting Christians who didn't believe. Like you said, non-Christians, but what I thought in the article, this guy was...
He was. So
he was a Christian, and because he wasn't on a Trump, he wasn't on that Trump path, and they were like, oh, you ain't on the Trump path, you not with us, you know what I mean, as a religion, and then they literally were off, because he didn't believe in Trump.
So, that comes down again to us being mindful about what it is that we believe, because our beliefs are really an opinion of what's true and what's not true. And it may or may not line up with what's true. And the farther it is from truth, the more confusion and chaos and conflict that we find in our lives. But, it's this thing, and I guess that's the thing, and I'm very happy to be in New Thought, although we have our problems also with this. But it's this idea of being divisive, that we're separating the chosen, or the ones that are going to get into heaven, from those who aren't. And that idea that we need to follow these particular rules because it's God's law, that we try to either impose that on everybody else, or that if we don't impose it on them, we ostracize them. And so it can get very divisive. To your point, a child that is having confusion about their sexuality, if they come from a household that says, no, this is not what we do, we have very traditional roles, where does that leave that child when that child wants to be a part of a community, wants to be a part of that family, and is not feeling welcome and loved because they're not towing the line to whatever expectations there are of them?
That's interesting you said that, because in the article it goes on feeling like the guy said he felt like he was on the inside, and then when everybody turned on him, he all of a sudden felt on the outside. So like you're saying, with the kids, the young people who may be having those conflicting thoughts and feelings, and not knowing how to compartmentalize them, because what their religion and what their parents are telling them is this is wrong, this isn't right. And these pastors, what I'm seeing with these particular pastors or these guys is they didn't have those same beliefs. But they believed in Christianity. So it seems like they're conflicted within themselves as well. Like,
so,
go ahead.
Question is, where is this conflict coming from? If apparently the gentleman is in the same church as with other Christians, but all of a sudden he feels like he is on the outside, right? So why do we think that is?
I think that we often confuse religion and what we should do with our cultural beliefs. And, very often a religion will come out of a particular culture and whatever's going on in their particular nation or locale at a particular time, especially with Christianity, and that's how we end up with so many different denominations. But to give you a little bit more clarity, the person that wrote the article said there were two things that happened years apart, but that he found came together that changed his perspective and gave him the ability to see things as an outsider when he was on the insider. The first thing was, and David French is white, he and his wife adopted a 2-year-old child from Ethiopia in 2010. Then when Trump announced that he was running for president, he realized that he could not support Trump because Trump signified to him everything that he didn't believe that the Republican Party should be standing for. And that was when his trouble started. That the more that he came out against Trump and wrote articles about how he thought Trump was not the right candidate, the people that, were so enamored with him turned on him. And he started to see the white nationalism come up. He said he had a woman in his church that said to his wife, why couldn't you adopt a child from Norway instead of Ethiopia? He had another person come and, basically accuse him of all different kinds of things. And so, it's the thing that I said to you guys, is your religion keeping you from being a good Christian? The things that people are telling you that makes you a good Christian, is it really preventing you from being the loving, kind of accepting person that we read about in the Bible that Jesus the Christ was? Or is it that we're so focused on being part of the chosen group and being a part of the clique that we're going to try to ostracize anybody else and demonize anybody else to lift us up?
Okay, so I'm trying to get to our through line, right, which is about perspectives, right? So I'm just trying to understand, because this person was believed one thing at one point.
Well, I don't think his belief system changed.
Yeah, he still believed it.
It's just that he was not able to see right in front of his face the racism. He thought that the racism and the nationalism was not part of his church. And it wasn't until what he perceived as a threat in Donald Trump, and he spoke out against it, that he started to see the different things come at him that he was not able to see before.
So it's a matter of perspective? I'm just trying to understand.
I suppose so. I
You said
suppose
he was blind. Wait. Where the mic? He was what? Come on. Speak up.
I didn't come to speak.
You did today.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought when listening to y'all, I feel like he was blind. It's not a matter of perspective. Because to me, it felt like, or listening, it seems like he had an awareness after experiencing the trauma or the ostracism of him and being criticized. Because now it's like you're walking and having this experience where you're protected, or you don't feel any. You're in the clique.
Yeah.
And now that you're not in the clique, or you start moving differently, and now it's like, okay, why don't you get a child from Norway? Because it's probably not easier, and it probably costs you a whole lot more. And there are also probably not that many people giving up their kid. So Ethiopia is doing that, and so they went with it, where the process is easier because adopting a child is not the easiest process. But I digress. The point of it is that he has this child that's black, so he has to be aware, because if you're raising up a child who's of a different nationality, it's wrong on you to not embrace their culture. So then now you know somebody's running for president who also has issues with how you live and how you move. You have to, you now woken up to the issues that somebody has, because that was never your experience because you was in a bubble. Now you outside the bubble, and then also the people that you were in the bubble with are treating you differently. He woke up. He's not blind anymore. He has an understanding, because again, it's white privilege, and they all continue to experience it when they step outside of that bubble that they're in. That's why most of them don't speak up. They may feel a certain way, but they don't speak up.
So I want to challenge you a little bit on this. I agree about the white privilege, but do we and other groups do that in a different way?
Always, yes. We are, and I get the clique part. It's tribal. You want to be a part of the tribe. I've always been outside the tribe, so I totally get feeling like an outsider and people not embracing you. I moved to my own peak. I've always been that way. So it's challenging if you've never had that experience. And I'm surprised he didn't cave and go back in, because
That's not who he is.
And so I like that for him, but not everybody's able to do that. And it's only because it's a part of survival. It's a part of the human nature. You want to be a part of something to feel oneness. And that's what it's all about. But if you don't feel that, then it's really challenging, because you have to feel that within yourself. And so he obviously must have that within him to be able to move independently. But most people can't, and most people won't. So that's what I'm saying. He woke up to the realization of who he was participating with, who his tribe was, because he didn't really know. That's what I'm saying.
So his perspective changed on the tribe?
Well, I think his perspective changed on what he was able to see. It's, we talk about things, the conversation probably still is, but I remember growing up hearing people talk about, like, the drug problem. Nobody did anything about the drug problem until white people started having their kids with addiction, but as long as it stayed in the Black and Hispanic communities, we don't need to do anything about it. And that may be a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but not too much. So, I think that we can't necessarily relate to things that don't touch us in some sort of way, personally. Some of us may be able to have empathy, but there are some people, just because they have not had the experience, it's not real for them, and they can't see it. But he began to see it when he was writing these articles about Trump, when he started saying things about in support of LGBTQ plus issues and about identity, and that he was open to, and not necessarily saying that he supported people that they should do it, but that he supported their right to be able to do it and to be treated with dignity and humanity. And that went against whatever the line was in the church. So,
And why do you think they were so objectionable? They thought it was so objectionable what he was thinking and what he was saying.
I think one of the things I liked in the article was it said that Americans don't prefer balance. We want to have dominion. So in this particular case, if you don't fit in my box of what my religion says, if you don't fit in the box of my beliefs, if you don't fit in the box of what I want to do as who I want to vote for politically, because I say I'm a Christian, you are no longer in this box. I am not accommodating your belief, because the dominant belief is, if you're a Christian, you have to believe in Trump, you have to vote for Trump, you don't believe in adopting Ethiopian kids, you need to adopt what looks like, all of those judgments. Because really that's all that it was putting on, is a judgment. You know what I mean? You're judging, the people in his own religion were judging him when you're not supposed to have judgment, right? That's what I thought.
They say.
And that's what they say.
And I want to make this clear. We're not
what they say.
We're not bashing Christianity in particular.
Absolutely not.
Because every religion has this issue, and every community has this issue. It just happens to be manifesting itself this way in this country.
Yeah, and in this particular topics, right?
So from what I'm hearing, what it's sounding like is there's a rigidity,
yes.
An inability to see another's perspective. And as you said, it's very judgmental.
And I think that's baked into religion in general, that, in order for you to be a part of us, of what we believe, there are these rigid things that you have to do as part of accepting the faith. Now, for each religion or even denomination of Christianity, there's a different standard. There are some sects of Christianity that are a lot more open and progressive, or that, you can read the Bible or any religious text and find something to support your viewpoint. You can find something to support peace and reconciling with others. And you can have others that say when somebody does you wrong, you go after them and you try to wipe them out.
Okay, so my question is, what's the truth?
What's the truth?
What's the truth in this? So we've talked about this, from the gentleman's perspective, that, he felt no longer that he was part of the tribe, or he no longer agreed with the tribe. And you talked about the rigidity and the judgment. So what's the truth? What's the truth?
Stay in the flow. I like that.
Say more. Can you pass the mic?
Like, don't let me.
People need to hear.
Well, you conform it as you're talking.
So I said the truth was to stay in the flow. If he found that what they were doing felt like an obstacle on the journey that he was taking, then he just, instead of trying to push them down or show them that his way is better, I'm not saying they keep doing that. Just go around and keep moving. If that's not where you're going, feels like you shifted in another direction, make that shift and be okay with that. They don't all have to agree. He doesn't have to make them see your perspective might be rigid or limited. That's their journey. Mm-hmm. His journey is let him move elsewhere, and carry and go forward.
Thank you. That's a great perspective. Any other? We got somebody that stood up.
I mean, you stand
all right.
up. Come on, stand up.
Stand up for what you want to say.
So happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me. So I think that the conversation leads to something that one is often overlooked, and that's the idea that everything is fluid. These perspectives we have, these ideas, these opinions, like everything is fluid, and everything is constantly being challenged, constantly being, rethought, reevaluated, refocused. And so I think that him providing this perspective does illustrate that fluidity, and that we need to understand that in our truth, that, the way you feel about the word one day might not be the way you interpret the word the next day. So yes, I think that kind of is what I'm getting from it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So let's move on to the next story or article that we read about. It was about the bone marrow donor and the recipient, the donor and the recipient, right? So it was an interesting story. We found it was on NPR's Radio Lab. Right. So if y'all ever get a chance, I think maybe we'll put it on the website so people can check it out. It was an interesting conversation. This young lady chose to become a bone marrow donor. She thought it was really interesting how it works. That it is like a 1 in a whatever million chance that you'll be the perfect person to be a donor for bone marrow that will help save someone's life. And she thought that concept and that idea was so much bigger than us as individuals. That you can support somebody and be helpful to somebody. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know who it's going to be with, but that you can somehow participate in this giving and receiving of this life for people. And it turns out that she was able to be a bone marrow donor, and the recipient had an experience. He was a religious person, but he was having challenges with his belief. Wasn't sure what was happening, especially after he found out he had this type of cancer, and it was just challenging for him. And so he was having what they call a crisis of faith. Thank you. I was trying to think of the word, a crisis of faith. But once he found out that this person was a donor, there was a lot of things that he saw as he was going through this process of receiving this bone marrow from this person that helped him to re-energize, revigorate his belief in his faith. And a lot of things that he saw it from the context of God showing him and Jesus showing him that there is a God, there is a belief in Jesus, and that this person was kind of sort of like his savior, was his representative of Jesus as the savior in his life. And, he was a magician, and he talked about this concept in his show. And when him and the donor finally met, she was taken aback, right? Because she's an atheist. So she didn't believe in it, believe in this concept that he believed in. But it was really interesting how they talked about it and the respect they had for each other. So that's just the basis of what the show was about.
And she also helped him in some of the shows that he was doing, where when he would talk about this miracle that happened with him and how this person showed up and saved his life, that he introduced her and that she came out on stage. So part of the thing for me was that she had this conflict that made me think about when you've got two values that are like conflicting with one another. Because the reason she did it is that he would get people to sign up to become bone marrow donors. And for her, that was a larger value than her not going along with the religious part of it. And it made her feel like that she was an imposter. So she had to deal with that thing of feeling like an imposter. I don't believe what he's telling them, but I want people to be bone marrow donors, so I'm willing to go out and support him. I'm not going to come out and say that I'm not, a religious, but I'm also not going to contradict what he's saying either. So for me, the question is, when you've got this conflict, and I guess in some ways this kind of relates to what's happening with the election for some people, you've got this conflict that you've got, two candidates that you may not be enamored with one of them or both of them. What do you do?
What? I'm sorry. Something in my head.
Is it something you can say out loud?
No. Actually, my train of thought was very different from yours. That's why I was like,
okay. We'll talk about yours too.
I want to focus on the bone marrow donor and the recipient. And you were taking us to
a different place.
Yes. So I want to go back to that. We can come back to that, but I really want us to focus on the bone marrow donor and the recipient. And what was your thoughts on, I guess, the difference in how they saw things, and what it might have meant?
Okay, so I thought when it was interesting to hear the whole story, because the guy who actually received, the receiver of the bone marrow, went through his own phase of not believing in God. Like, so he, and when I was listening to it at the beginning, I knew the concept, so I thought he was the atheist. Like, in the beginning, when I was listening to his story, I was like, oh, he the atheist, and he gonna get this, and it's gonna save his life, and then he gonna believe in God. But he already had an underlying, belief in God, but he just didn't feel it. And through this experience, he actually felt the connection with God. And that's where what I got was his turning point. He was like, okay, okay, God, I was asking for, show me, and you actually showed me in a real tangible way that I can see it, feel it, and know that this is true. Mm-hmm. For her, it was interesting because she was hearing this and she was like, yeah, I don't get that Jesus, made me do this, or that Jesus is the reason why I did this. It's bigger than Jesus, you know what I mean? Because I don't believe in a personification. What I heard her saying in it is more of a personification of what God is. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in a man substance of God, but I believe, she never said I believe in anything. But she was kind of like, there's something bigger. There's
she had this concept that there's something greater than she was.
Something greater than she was. But I liked how he never knocked her for that.
Yeah.
When he found out that she didn't believe in Jesus, he loved her unconditionally because he was like, man, you are the woman who brought me this life. I don't care what you believe. If you say you don't believe in God, so what? I love you no matter what. And that is the part of Christianity that I loved about what he was bringing to the table. Mm-hmm. He was bringing the non-judgment of his belief, and he believed in Jesus and all of that. But he was not judging her for not having that same belief, and loved her unconditionally. And that really touched me in that story. Mm-hmm. Was like, man, if we could all just be like, okay,
be a bit more like that.
Yeah, like you believe what you believe, go ahead.
Because truth be told, it's really about love. Love is a verb. And her God, all infinite, whatever you believe in, it's the basis of love and a selflessness act of giving or expanding in this entity called life or existence. And she did that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even if you believe something differently, the truth of it is, what's that person's heart, regardless if they believe like you or not. But most people can't see past that. It's got to be, you think like me, you move like me, you have to be in the same tribe, you have to have the same title. What about the person's essence?
Well, there were some interesting things that came out about that. So I'd like to share with you how he got to where he was.
But I'm going to let you keep going. Just 1 second. I just wanted to remind the audience out there, if you have any thoughts or ideas about what we're talking about, have any opinions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We are paying attention. We want to go ahead and share your perspective as well. Go ahead, Reverend.
Sure. So at the time that he had was going to have this procedure done, he had just lost a very, very close friend that he was working with. Were doing these magician shows where they would get people to, at the end of basically the guy would do this magician show and then say, I'm going to talk to you about Christianity now. Anybody that doesn't want to stay, you're welcome to leave. If you want to stay, stay. So he was working with him, kind of producing these shows. That man's name was Tennyson. So Tennyson dies kind of suddenly. He falls off a cliff and dies. And it had like a very severe impact on his life. And his life started to go kind of downhill. His relationship with his wife started to get strained. And then he discovers that he has this pain in his knee. And they diagnose it as some sort of leukemia. So he's almost at the point where he's getting really critical, and he gets this hope that, this leukemia, that this bone marrow transplant may save his life. The way the doctors presented it to him is that what we're going to do now is we're basically going to kill you. And once you get this bone marrow, it's going to be like a new life for you. So here's where things started to stack up for this young man. His name was Jim. She had the procedure done on April 20th. And what they did is they gave her these drugs that would help her to produce more white blood cells and stem cells. She goes someplace and they basically hook her up to this thing that's like a dialysis machine that drains the blood out of her body, takes whatever it needs, and then puts back what it doesn't need. She sits there for 6 hours, April 20th. April 23rd, 3 days later, he gets the bone marrow treatment. Turns out that his birthday was April 20th. And then 3 days later, it's like April 20th is when he died. They gave him all of these drugs, chemo, to like knock his immune system completely out. And he's resurrected 3 days later when he gets this bone marrow treatment. And so the parallel to Jesus was so much for him that it made him feel like Jesus had to be behind this. Then when he meets her, she has these tattoos on her arm that are in a specific place. He said, well, do you have any other tattoos? She says, no. Tattoos look like jigsaw puzzles. The reason that she had them made up was that for her, giving the blood and connecting with this person dropped in a piece of the puzzle for her life to make her whole. For him, it was where she was punctured. It reminded him of when Jesus showed the disciples his hands after the crucifixion to convince them that he had risen from the dead. So he's got all of these things wrapped up in the story and these quote-unquote coincidences that made him feel that Jesus had to be behind all of this, and that was what pushed his faith to where it was now. So he gives these shows now where he does this magic act, and then afterwards he talks to people about Christianity and the miracle, and will you be a bone marrow donor?
So, thank you for filling in those pieces for us. My question is, the terminology that he used was very Christian, right? Resurrection and the piercing and all that kind of stuff. So he's seeing that from the perspective, from the lens of Christianity. She's not seeing it from that lens, right? Now, granted, they're having two different experiences, right? It's the same set of facts, but they're having two different experiences, right? Because she's the donor and he's the recipient. So I think it's very interesting that because he's looking it through the lens of Christianity, that it turns out to him to be a resurrection experience, as opposed to her looking at it from the lens of atheism, right? And her just thinking of it as synchronicity or,
and putting good out of the universe.
And it's just being part of the all or the one. And I'm using that terminology, right? Because I'm looking at it from the lens of New Thought. So it's looking at things from different perspectives. And I thought that was a very interesting concept that they each had their own lenses and they each had their own perspective. But what was wonderful about the story that I saw is that they were respectful of each other's perspective, right?
And they accepted each other unconditionally. Unconditionally.
Yeah. Anything else about that story?
Well, like I said, for me, I guess the first thing that came up was about this idea of when you've got conflicting values, how do you decide which one wins? And particularly with this month of us paying attention, for her, the greater value was, I want to save a life. And I want to also help to promote other people to save a life. And so that trumps my horror at supporting someone in something that their belief is contrary to mine. And, I think what it made me think about is how intentional we are with our values and how we prioritize them. And are we really aware of them beforehand, or is it only when the conflict is up in our face that we really take a look at it?
Well, here's the question. Do we know what our values are? Right? Do we know what our values are? If we do understand who we are and what we value, does it make it easier to make those decisions? If we already know who we are and where we stand from?
It can and it should.
Right.
I think that when you are clear about what you believe, and why you believe what you believe. There are some people that will, it makes me think about when I was growing up. I grew up in a church called Fire Baptized Holiness Church. And at the time, this was in the late 60s, early 70s, they believed that it was a sin for men to have long hair. And they were very adamant about the hippies and the big afros. And my great uncle was actually the pastor of the church we attended. He has a son that's a few years older than I am, and his name is Tim. Cousin Tim went off to college, came back with this huge afro, and all of a sudden the big afros weren't so bad anymore.
Right.
So
The perspective has changed, huh?
the perspective has changed. So, it also speaks to the value. The value of accepting my son is more important than this idea that long hair is a sin.
One of the things I liked in the article, and we can wrap it up at this, because I know we got something else to talk about. Even though the lady said she didn't believe in God and was an atheist, one point that she did say is whenever he would talk about the experience and give his testimony, she felt something. She was like, I could feel something. She felt something. And she was like, and everybody I told the story to, no matter what their religion was, felt something. So whether she believed it or not, she was actually acknowledging there is a presence. She just didn't want to label it love. We'll call the presence love.
Yeah, she referred
She
to
felt
it
the
as,
presence. Yeah,
she referred to it as good with a big G,
good
capital
with a
G.
big G.
Yes, yes.
Love. So she was feeling it, but she just didn't know how to compartmentalize it into.
So my last question about this, although the perspectives were different, were they really so different?
No.
No, and I think in a lot of ways, no, it just was the lens that they were able to express it through.
Right, so there's an acknowledgement that oftentimes we're really not as far apart as we like to think or say or argue, right? If we're able to just be a little more open-minded and recognize that there may be different ways of seeing and looking at things, right?
Or sometimes, you just accept people for who they are and where they are, and that doesn't make them good or bad necessarily, but they've got something to offer you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we've saved the best, maybe, I don't know how you want to look at it, for last. So, we had a big presidential debate, right? Big presidential debate.
Big one. Lots
And
of truths told.
So I don't necessarily want to get into whether you're Democrat or Republican or anything like that. I think what we're more interested in looking at is how the presentation of the country was shared on either side. The view of what the country is going through, what the country has the potential to go through or has been going through, or how to move through what we're going through right now. I think they were very contrasting ways of doing that, right? What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts?
What are your thoughts?
Well, after I watched the SmackDown, to some extent, I think that where I am, where I work, there are people who are more conservative in their viewpoint, and that there are, to use a unpopular term, good people on both sides. And a lot of this has to do with their perspective of what it is that they believe. And a lot of it's cultural about what they believe. But what I see are two very different visions being presented for the country, regardless of what you think specifically about the candidates. One has a vision of the country that is based in fear, and to try to climb to power through the use of fear. And the other has a vision of the country that is more of hope and of being able to rise to power through promoting hope and opportunity and giving rather than taking away.
I think I'd have to agree with Reverend Terry. I just saw an interesting perspective. I can't say, Trump came as Trump I thought Trump would come. You know what I mean? Like I didn't expect anything different. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you, from Kamala, because I haven't heard her speak. Kamala, Madam President. We'll just call her Madam President. We're going to call her Madam President. Okay. Claim it. Thank you. That right there. We're going to call her Madam President. But she came with her jazz at Trump, too. And it really, I think, also gave me... I was talking to you guys about this earlier. I have some people on my social media that follow Trump or that support Trump that I didn't know until now. Right, yeah. And I was really surprised that these people actually support him. But I continue to follow them because I wanted to see their perspective. What is it that because these aren't bad people. Like, I knew them outside of, or I knew. And
they're not unintelligent.
And they're not unintelligent. Like, I'm like, okay, you're not dumb. Like, you know what I mean? So what is it about this man? And it's their perspective. You know what I mean? It's how the position she's in life, what she has available to her, what has come to her through Trump. And it really just kind of helped me see the people in different perspectives. And it doesn't make them a bad person or a good person. She just has a different perspective. I haven't unfriended her because I'm still interested to see what she says. And sometimes she posts really positive and inspiring things. But then at the same time, I'm just kind of like, how are you supporting someone who is, in my perception, the complete opposite of that? But that's my perception. She doesn't see him that way. And I really just I've been trying.
Why don't you ask her the question?
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Why don't I answer the question?
Why some people call it confrontational. I disagree. I'm seeking understanding. So if you're my friend, I don't make everyone my friend.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're my friend, can you help me understand? If you're posting this, but he has shown X, Y, and Z that's opposite of what you profess you believe in, or you profess that's your value, how does he align? Where does he match your value? Why not ask her that question is what I'm wondering.
Because she's a social media friend.
Sidebar, take it to the DM. Take it to the DM. You don't have to ask her personally.
And that may be something I reach out to. You didn't do it because I don't know her. Like, I'm trying to remember where I met this person. This was a long time ago, and we've been Facebook friends. So it's not somebody that I interact and talk to all the time. You know what I mean? I don't even know when the last time I seen her.
But I agree with you. A part of somebody. I always feel like people do not allow themselves to be the catalyst for change. And when I say that, meaning like asking a person an uncomfortable question. There's too many people allowing people to be comfortable in their ignorance or their different perspective. So it's like, okay, how I'm the person on the outside. If you say this and I see this, can you help me understand? Because I'm somebody who follows you. I actually enjoy your content, but I don't understand this. I'm not coming from a place where I'm going to make you feel bad because, again, you have the right to have a different perspective, but can you help me understand? Yeah. As somebody who cares or likes you as a person. Just to help. You might help me open up my mind, and I end up liking Trump my damn self. I'm just saying. But, I just ask a question. I really would like to know. Yes.
Yeah. And I have asked that question of someone who doesn't support Trump but has family that supports Trump and talks about it. So I haven't asked the question directly, but indirectly, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because I haven't been the confrontational. No, it is not confrontational.
It's not. For me, it can come off confrontational if the person's defensive, but it's not confrontational if your heart's in the right space. I'm seeking understanding. I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I just want to understand your perspective and how do you make this make sense. Whoever, family member or your social media friend, take it to the DM. Just asking, hey, I know you post all of this stuff, but Trump seems to not
he would never post any of this because he's confrontational. Can you help me understand how do you want to follow somebody who's confrontational? Or do you live in a world of duality? It could be that. It's just how you present the question.
So I can tell you some things that I've at least seen where they've interviewed people that were supposed to be undecided and kind of made up their minds after the debate. There are some people that feel like I don't have to like a person in order to vote for them as long as they do things that are in my self-interest. So think like Bill Clinton back when the Monica Lewinsky scandal came out. At that time, the Republicans were like, this is an immoral man and he's this, that, and the other thing. And a lot of Democrats were like, I don't care. Country's doing good, keep Bill in office. And so for some of them, it's the same kind of thing on the opposite end. You know, he may be a complete butthead or whatever, but
Nice word.
my life was better than, you know, and many of them will say my life was better when he was in office than it is now. So they're associating him being in office and not really understanding all the dynamics behind what created that or what helped to create that versus what helped to create the situation we're in now.
I appreciate where you're coming from, Ife, because that's I guess that's part of the question, right? Are we open-minded enough, right? Are we willing to look at another person's perspective, or are we too rigid and judgmental to even have that kind of conversation without it devolving into a screaming match, or I will unfriend you, or you know what have you? Being open to see somebody else's perspective and not judging what that may be. Is that the issue in this country? You know, and are we so much? You know, it has to look like hope and change, or it has to. Yes, I'm scared. You know whatever it may be. And so, where's the truth in this? Just asking the question.
I think for one thing, it shows how when we misapply truth, that we can run into problems with those around us by failing to recognize that we're all in this together, that we're one. I think another thing that it shows is how we can create our reality by constantly using the same thoughts over and over again. That if you are a person that sees the world in a particular way, everything else is going to get filtered out. And you're going to keep seeing proof of what you believe until you change what you believe, and that opens your eyes up to see something different.
I'm being led to I'm being led to say that the truth I believe in this situation is that it's all gonna be okay regardless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that we kind of get in these these boxes in our mind of oh my God, what's gonna happen, and I think that the truth is it's gonna be fine regardless of who's the president, or because it's about us, and it's about us on the individual collective conscious level.
And I think that's something we all need to remember.
I was going to say the same thing, so you literally just took the words out of my mouth. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't... All of this stuff, at the end of the day, we're going to be good. Like, you will be good. Everything will work out for your highest and greatest good, no matter who is in that high office. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to go and vote. You still need to go and vote.
Most definitely.
But it's all good. It's all going to work out for your highest and greatest good, no matter who's in that office.
So the through line that we've been talking about, I think, is different perspectives, being open to understanding, and recognizing that regardless of what happens, what perspective, quote unquote, wins out, that everything is in divine order, that we're understanding. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
Well, this is a little bit off the debate, but I have to take a look at what Vice President Harris has done in a relatively short period of time with getting a campaign that appeared to be faltering and to bring it where at least this is a competitive race, or looks like it's a competitive race. And, I know that there are many factors with this, but it makes me think about a few things. Number one, there's this idea of divine timing, that when an opportunity presents itself or where the conditions are right, are you ready? Because when she got started with this at the beginning of August, more or less is when this happened, that she had to basically whip support around her to get everybody to line up. And that in and of itself, was a monumental task. She had to retool her campaign and basically do a number of things that I couldn't have done it. I know that. And I think that a lot of people would have trouble being able to do things to the extent that she's been able to do it. She also has shown me that you don't have to let somebody else define who you are. There were all these people talking about, oh, she hasn't done anything, she's weak, she's this, that, she's the other thing. The woman I saw at the debate was anything but weak, and was anything but somebody who didn't have a vision and who didn't know how to fight. And so all the stuff that people have been talking about with her and what she hasn't done, and she's been invisible, she was doing her job. And she also was sitting back learning from whatever she was doing to see how she'd be able to use this. And she's applying this in what she's doing right now. Is she going to win the election? I don't know, but I certainly hope so. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but I know how I'm going to vote. And, regardless of what it is that you do, please get out and vote.
Anything else you'd like to?
Get out and vote. Vote.
Okay.
Can't tell you which way to vote, but your vote counts.
Gotcha. I think I think I've said it already, but just being open-minded, being non-judgmental, leading with your values, leading with love, and knowing that everything is in divine order, divine timing. And so there's no need to not have those conversations, and no need to live in complete fear. Absolutely. Guys, this was a meaty conversation. There's a lot more that could have been said on each one of them. We could have had a whole show around each one of these stories. We will put a link to the stories on our website. So if you all are interested in learning something more, don't you love how I'm putting that out there? Just reading more on these stories that we have talked about, please do, especially the one on the bone marrow donor, and the recipient is very, very interesting. So let us move forward and finish out this wonderful day. Alrighty, so this is our opportunity to give, right? So we have a couple ways you could do that. The Tithely, right? You can go ahead and text this to this number. It's a one-time setup, but once you go ahead and text that number, you'll get a link to create your account, and you can make your gift at any time. Tithely is one convenient way to do that. And then we also have Cash App, right? Everybody knows Cash App. You can use Cash App to go ahead and give as well. Our Cash App handle is $LT365. And then also we do have Zelle. So you could set up to become a sustainable giver here with Living Truth 365. You can set up LT365 as a payee using our email address, livingtruth365@gmail.com. Once you create that, you can mark it as a repeating payment, and then you can go ahead and set it and forget it, except for when you want to add more, increase it, or what have you. You can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and give you all just a moment to go ahead and make your donations. Once you have, please look up at me, and we will move forward. I'm doing mine at the same time with you guys. At the same time. You see how technology works? We could all do it at the same time. What is today's date?
The 15th.
15. Thank you. Okay, now. All righty, guys. So now that we have done our gift, let's go ahead and say our affirmation together 3 times.
There is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it. There is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it.
And last time,
there is no lack or limitation. There is only infinite abundance. And through my giving, I tap into the infinite flow, and I am one with it.
Now this one 3 times to seal the deal.
I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing. I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing. I am tapping infinite prosperity and sharing.
And so it is. Ooh, that's so good when we do that. I feel that energy. Just a few announcements. Moments of Meditation is still on hiatus until October. So make sure that you're going ahead and practicing the presence on your own, that you're taking some time to meditate and be still and go within. But we're going to start back strong at the beginning of October, the first Thursday in October. Of course, we have Dr. Rocco's Nora Foundation that we support. He has his Aramaic School of Light. That's the second Saturday of each month from 1 to 3. And there's a $30 per class fee if you want to go ahead and join that. Then he has his online classes each and every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8. And it's a love offering. So whatever you are moved to give, you can go ahead and do so. To get more information, you can contact Nora Foundation at norafoundation@mail.com. Not Gmail, mail.com. We have our Friday breakthrough calls. We had a wonderful breakthrough call this past Friday where we talked about that challenge that I gave to everybody last week, your attention diary, where you're paying attention to what you're doing, what you're focusing on, how many times, different things like that. You can continue to do that so you can see what you're focusing on and how it's manifesting and how you need to tweak what you're paying attention to. So join us every Friday. It's only for 15 minutes. Our Friday breakthrough call. You can call that phone number and have that access code, and then we can all support one another as we're continuing to break through our barriers. Truth and Truckers hiking team is on hiatus until further notice. We'll let you know when we start back up with that, but that doesn't mean you can't go out in nature and take a walk. All righty. So guys, Sunday, October 6th, we are having our breakthrough healing service. The month of October is being a conduit of healing. We've held this healing service for the past 2 years. This is going to be our 3rd year. It's a very powerful service that we're going to have with you. We invite you to definitely come into Living Truth 365. It is so much more powerful when you're here to participate in this healing service. But if you cannot, it will also be online that you can join us for that. That will be October 6th at 11 a.m. You don't want to miss it. Be here for that. And then we're also having, as part of our Being a Conduit of Healing and our Breakthrough Barrier event, we will be doing the Atlanta Community Food Bank on October 27th. That's Sunday, October 27th. So we are not going to be here. We are going to be at the Atlanta Community Food Bank, the location 3400 North Desert Drive in Atlanta, Georgia. That is the East Point. That's near East Point. Join us for that. In order to do that, you need to sign up. We have been sending emails out.
We'll be sending
a text blast out that has this link for you to sign up under Living Truth 365. So please go ahead and join us for this worthy cause we're going to be supporting. This is our community service event that we're doing in the month of October. You don't want to miss it. If you do not get an email or a text blast from us, please reach out to one of the ministers and we'll make sure that you get the link so that you can sign up and join us in that. The sooner you do it, the better. There's limited spaces. All righty. As we have been talking about, the election is November 5th. So it's important that you vote. Whatever you choose to do, we're not telling you who to vote for or how to vote or whatever. We're just telling you to vote. Early voting begins on October 15th. And it ends on November 1st, and then your next chance to vote is on actual election day. So we also want you to go to the My Voter page. Make sure that everything is in order for you to go ahead and vote. Make sure that you check that you have not been purged from the voter rolls. Make sure to check where you're supposed to vote. As I understand it, they're also changing locations. So make sure you have that understanding of where you can, and if not, going ahead and getting yourself registered to vote, and help your friends and family members who are not registered to go ahead and register to vote. Once you do that, if you don't want to do early voting, if you want to vote on that day, make sure you make a plan to vote. How are you going to go ahead and do that? What time are you going to go? Who you going to drag with you so they could vote as well. Make sure you have all that in place. It's important that we exercise our right as citizens to vote. All right. Guys, get your rep and tea. What we want you to do, especially if you're going to participate in the community service that we do on October 27th, is go ahead and get you a Living Truth 365 tee. It doesn't matter which one, just a Living Truth 365 tee. Reverend Terry has on a rep and tea today where he's repping peace. We have so many, repping spirituality, repping truth, all that kind of stuff, repping love. Go ahead and get you one of these repping tees or any other Living Truth 365 tee. Reverend Chantel has on the Living Truth 365 tee. We also have a one that we use for volunteering that says Living Truth Cares. We have also our Breaking Barrier tees. So you have a plethora of options, right? So we encourage you to go ahead and get your t-shirt so that you can go ahead and rep Living Truth as we do our community service, so that people know that we're out there and we're supporting these different causes around it. Remember, every dollar goes to support Living Truth 365 and all the efforts we do in our community and for the programs that we hold for our community members. If you want more information on anything that we've talked about, any of the announcements, livingtruth365.org. You can go there and find out more. You can ask questions. You can get in contact with us, anything like that, livingtruth365.org. So let's now end with our 2024 Breaking Barrier affirmation. 3 times.
There are no barriers in God, therefore there can be no barriers in me. There are no barriers in God, therefore there can be no barriers in me.
Hold on. Ooh, breathe that in. Take it in. Make sure that you're paying attention to what you're saying and how you're feeling as you're saying it. One more time together.
There are no barriers in God, therefore there can be no barriers in me. And so it is.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Have an absolutely fabulous week. Namaste and abundant blessings.
And cut. Beautiful guys. Beautiful guys.